What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry, very excited to bring you this week's episode of Next Pats because we have a very special guest. We're talking to the head coach of the Eastern Washington football program, Aaron Best. And the reason we wanted to have Aaron on was to teach us a little bit about one of the most intriguing members of this year's Patriots rookie class. No, he wasn't drafted. He's a member of their undrafted rookie contingent. He goes by the name of Efton Chism III, wide receiver, 5'10", a shade under 200 pounds, 193. So he's not the biggest guy in the world, but the reason he is as intriguing as he is because this man was uber productive. Over 3,800 yards, 346 receptions. He averaged 11.1 yards per catch, 37 touchdowns, just 11 drops over 5 years at Eastern Washington. He broke Cooper Kupp's receptions record for the Eagles. He also had a catch in 53 straight games, which also broke Cooper Kupp's record at Eastern Washington. This is a program with a long history of productive receivers coming from that FCS level. Kendrick Bourne with the Patriots right now. Cooper Kupp's teammate at Eastern Washington. Now, Efton Chism's teammate in New England. How is this player potentially going to fit in? Is he going to have a real shot at making the NFL roster, working for a coach like Josh McDaniels, who's had a ton of success with receivers who, let's be honest, look a lot like and play a lot like Efton Chism does? He's going to have to live in the slot in all likelihood at the next level, although they use him all over the field at Eastern Washington as a collegian. And boy, is this guy quick. Quicker than fast, no question about it. Understands how to run routes, understands how to get open. He showed exactly that, not only at Eastern Washington, but at the Shrine Bowl, going against some of the best in this year's draft class. His ability to get open in one-on-one situations, in team situations, hard to beat at that Shrine game this year and during that week of practices leading up to the game. So I know I'm excited to watch Efton Chism during rookie minicamp. We're going to have an opportunity to see some of rookie minicamp a little bit later this week. I think the Patriots should be excited about seeing what he can do. Yes, there are others on the depth chart who might be ahead of him walking into training camp. Pop Douglas is the one who first comes to mind. We know what kind of juice he has, and his size, being similar to Efton Chism's, would force him to play a similar kind of role. So is Chism going to have to beat out Douglas in order to make this roster? Is there going to have to be some kind of injury? I'm not so sure. To me, Josh McDaniels has had success with multiple, quote-unquote, slot receivers on the roster at one time. You know, think about the guy right behind me, right over my right shoulder there. That's Julian Edelman. Now, Julian Edelman's a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit more versatile than somebody like, for instance, Danny Amendola, who might have a profile that is more similar to Efton Chism's. But those are two guys that obviously had a ton of success together, won Super Bowls together, that in this Josh McDaniels offense, where he is putting such a premium on having smart receivers, on having guys who understand how to get open, rather than having big, hulking, physical specimens on the outside who can run a 4-3. Yeah, I mean, McDaniels could work with those guys too, right? I mean, he worked with Randy Moss. Devontae Adams had all kinds of production out in Las Vegas with Josh McDaniels there as head coach. But let's not rule out Chism's opportunity to make this roster just because somebody like Pop Douglas, who might see a bump in terms of his production, who might see a bump in terms of his overall improvement level with Josh McDaniels in the fold, maybe those guys can exist together. And if Chism makes the roster, yeah, maybe that means somebody like Jalen Polk doesn't. Or maybe it means somebody like Javon Baker doesn't. So these are sort of the interesting roster machinations that will come more into focus as we get closer to the season, i.e., is Stephon Diggs healthy enough to start the season? If he's not, okay, maybe there's another spot in that receiver room. Stephon Diggs, at this point in his career, profiles probably more as a slot than anything else. So if he's not ready to go, if he has to start the season on PUP, coming off that torn ACL, then maybe that opens up a spot for somebody like Efton Chism. But you look at the production, you look at the ability to run routes, the record-setting career at Eastern Washington, and I'll just give you a quick synopsis from the Beast. This is our buddy friend of the program, Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he did have a little write-up on Efton Chism, even though he had him graded as a priority free agent. He says Chism is a slick route runner with craftsman hands and commendable toughness working into the teeth of the defense. Though he has better play strength than most slots, he is a smaller target and will face a substantial jump in the talent level against NFL defensive backs. He also returned punts in college, but averaged just 4.6 yards per attempt. Overall, Chism is the quintessential quicker-than-fast slot receiver with lagging deep speed, but dazzling feet in and out of breaks to give his quarterback quick windows. And listen, his athletic testing would indicate that those dazzling feet are going to play at the next level. A 4.06 short shuttle and a 6.77 three-cone that is lightning quick as a hiccup. And so if he can bring that level of route running, if he can bring that football brain that you're going to hear about from Aaron Best to Foxborough, to One Patriot Place, where he's able to pick up the offense and he's able to get on the same page as Drake May, as the Pastronaut, Josh Dobbs, who maybe he ends up working with more to start his first pro camps in the spring and summer. Maybe, just maybe, there's a shot for him to make an impact on this roster. Okay, without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Eastern Washington head coach Aaron Best. We'll come right back. We'll do something very, very quick. Piqued my interest on a recent episode of Early Edition, and we'll talk most improved players, the players we are projecting will be most improved under Mike Vrabel and this new Patriots coaching staff. But first, here's Aaron Best. Very happy now to have with us Aaron Best, head coach, Eastern Washington. Aaron, thanks so much for being with us here on Next Pats to talk about Efton Chism. This is exciting.
Appreciate the opportunity. Anytime we can talk about Eagles, we'll make time to talk about those Eagles.
Well, we're happy to have you to talk about those Eagles and talk about Efton. I just wanted to ask you first, what was your reaction to hearing that Efton was going to sign with the Patriots? I know there were people who thought he might get drafted, and so maybe there's some disappointment involved there, but you see him land with a team like the New England Patriots, Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels. What's going through your mind when you hear that news?
I think disappointment's something that we is not part of the equation, whether you're drafted or not. Maybe he had aspirations of hearing his name, but he got a call, and that's all you're looking for is a chance. And the fact that they've had a few guys in his position have lengthy NFL careers in the Patriots organization probably excited him a ton as a potential landing spot, and so. You need an opportunity, and now it's what you do with the opportunity that matters, and he totally and truly understands that.
What can you tell us about Efton just in terms of his personality, his football character? Aaron, I was just reading a story about Efton, and he had a cool quote in there where he's talking about his notebook and the goals that he has written in his notebook. And he's got the same four that he says he sees every day: NFL, All-American, Walter Payton, and then legend at the end of my time at Eastern. Those were his four goals that he saw every day. How much of a window into his psyche, into his character as a football player, is the contents of that notebook there?
Well, I think it started way back before he got on campus, and I think one of the things that wasn't in that notebook, which we saw every day, is his loyalty to not only his teammates, but also to this program, his family, and his gal friend who also played basketball here at Eastern, and they met along his journey here in Cheney. He is a consummate person, prepares like a consummate professional before his professional time came. He is a high academic guy, wants to be a teacher when it's all said and done. Hopefully that's a long time from now, but wants to give back to the community he was born and raised in Monroe, Washington, has had a ton of mentors along his journey in football and out of football, and wants to give back in every way. Huge in the community service world, has raised a ton of money for a lot of different entities along the way for people less fortunate, and so there's not a ton of things I could say about Efton that don't don't shine wherever he's at, and he takes it all the ball field. He's a selfless individual. It's hard to win Walter Payton's as a ball catcher as opposed to a ball thrower at the FCS level. We've had 4 in our time here at Eastern, so that might have been a lofty goal, but he's always had lofty goals and never stopped along the way just because they were lofty to some, because they're all attainable to him.
It's amazing just having the well-rounded collegiate career that it sounded like he had between the academics and the charitable work, and then obviously, over 3,500 yards as a receiver at a program like Eastern Washington. When was he putting in the work, Aaron? Like, do you have any stories about Efton and just, when he would show up, whether it was early or late, just to make sure he was doing what he needed to do, what he wanted to do to become the player that he became with all of this other stuff going on? I know time management is just such a huge piece of it for anybody that wants to have success at the level that he had success at. So when was he doing all of this grinding away to become the guy that he became on the football field?
Yeah, we joke about it all the time, Phil. Everybody tells the world they're grinding. I kind of stay away from that word because everybody's definition is different, and certainly different than Efton's. There's a long legacy of wide receivers that have been highly productive here at Eastern Washington University that have gone along and still play in the NFL. One of them is his teammates, Kendrick Bourne, that have put a lot of work in to get to the point where they're at. And so Efton would show up before half the coaches, would stay later than half the coaches at night. His time management is second to none. He balances family, football, academics, and his gal friend. He's very organized in his approach. Takes things very seriously. But to have NFL as a goal is one thing. To chase the goal by your behaviors and actions is another thing. And you have to have enough talent to get there. I would say one word that wraps him up just as a on and off the field person is productive. Highly productive. You know what you're going to get, and so that is a highly sought after characteristic when you know what you're going to get, because the proof is in his resume on and off the field.
Well, and you mentioned it. You coached some very productive receivers that have moved on to the NFL level. Kendrick Bourne, we've gotten to know over the years, just one of the best personalities, and obviously a really productive player in his own right when he's been, healthy and on the field. He's back with Josh McDaniels now, so we're expecting, another productive year from Kendrick this year. But Cooper Kupp as well. The people listening to this podcast, watching this right now, Aaron, will, obviously know and revere his career as well at the NFL level. And I've read a little bit about how Efton understood, he was breaking some of Cooper Kupp's records, and there were always going to be comparisons to Cooper Kupp. And just to be in that conversation, I think, for Efton was a real honor. Any similarities that you can describe for us, again, for people that are in the New England area, maybe didn't see a ton of Eastern Washington football, any similarities between Efton's game and Cooper's game, or even Efton's game and Kendrick's game for, a receiver that our audience does know a little bit better that maybe you could detail for us?
Yeah, I think it's I like to compare is a strong word because I think you put guys in bins, but I think the fact that you can move Efton around in a lot of different spots is something that we saw Coop do here at Eastern. Can play outside, can play inside, put him in motion, throw the ball, run the ball, jet sweeps. He's and again, Coop was as productive as anybody at the FCS level in any year over his time here. And so I think just the fact his hand-eye coordination is about as good as it gets between Efton and Cooper. They're very similar. If they put a ball on the ground, which is far and few between in a game, they feel almost like they let their teammates down. It wasn't the stats they were chasing. It's the fact that they were trying to build trust amongst their teammates. And they felt like they had to earn that trust in the next 15 or 20 balls they caught in a row. They're highly competitive people on and off the field. You have to have that to be the best at your position and to get to the level that they were at. Kendrick was just a talented individual, vivacious personality, as you know, smiles bigger than life, and just whenever you have a bad day, you need Kendrick to hop in the room because he'll lighten the day and the mood up ASAP with you. But all are very productive. All came to Cheney as highly sought after guys by us, and maybe not after, not the world kind of saw what they could show after their production was done here. But they all have their own journey, but they took a little bit, especially Efton looked into the legacy of receivers in the past. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of getting a chance, being productive with the chances you have, and then providing some production post college. So he's had a few teachers to learn from here, and the film is still rolling. There's still 2010 film from Brandon Kaufman and Nick Edwards here that Cooper watched, that KB watched, that Shaq Hill watched, that Simba Webster watched, and also Efton Chism watched. So that stuff is not archived. That stuff is relevant and real day in and day out. And that standard in that room was set well before Coop, and followed by Coop and KB and now Efton Chism.
One of the things that I found really interesting about Efton's game, Aaron, is that, he's, I think, a shade over at 5'10", a shade under 200 pounds. He's not the biggest guy in the world. But I believe, according to the numbers that I saw, that he led FCS among receivers in terms of forced missed tackles, which to me is really impressive. And you can do that in a variety of different ways, right? You could juke a guy, you could spin through a guy, you could run over a guy. But what does that say maybe about Efton, about his drive, about his maybe his hard-nosed style as a football player, even given his frame, that would be interesting for our audience to hear?
I think a couple things come to mind, Phil. He practices like he intends to play. He is a tough tackle, but he's better in tighter spaces than longer spaces, and he understands that. He's got great field awareness. Him and Cooper Kupp were two of the. They could see. They got eyes in the back of their head, on the sides of their head. Their field awareness is second to none. They know what they're going to do once the ball is caught. They've already had their move in mind. They trust the quarterback delivering the football at spots to get vertical when they can, turn it over correct shoulders. They just study the game, and then they study themselves and understand that a half a step might be a difference of a first down or a touchdown. So they practice Skelly on Tuesday, just like they intend to play the game on Saturday, no matter who they're playing. And there's not too many guys. There's been a lot of really productive college players here over the last 25 years of my existence in Cheney as a coach. But I would say the two that play the same way Tuesdays at Skelly and intend to play the same way when it's 11 on 11 against a different logo on Saturdays, undoubtedly are Cooper Kupp and Efton Chism. They just every play is a game rep, which can be really good, and sometimes you got to tone them down. But I'd rather tone people down than ramp people up.
Well, I know, from reading a little bit about him, Efton really appreciated you when it came to, it sounds like, some hard coaching. I know he felt like it really helped him, the fact that you were willing to tell him if something was wrong, and you gave him the truth all the time. And that was something that it seemed like really resonated with him. How is that something that you envision continuing at the next level, Aaron? I don't know why it wouldn't, but he's going to be working for a guy in Mike Vrabel, who I think is known as at times being a hard coach to play for in a good way. Josh McDaniels, same deal. He came up through Bill Belichick. There was one way of doing things here for a long time. How will he handle that type of coaching, do you think, as an NFL player?
Well, I think it's going to be easy translation. Tough coaching just means high standards, in my opinion. It's just like tough parenting. We're not going to lower our standards. Being an offensive lineman, former offensive lineman here at Eastern, probably I tell every recruit coming in, it's going to be a little harder for you because I've worn the logo since 1996. But hard just means the standard's higher, in my opinion. And I was fortunately able to play with Derek Stry, which Efton calls his uncle, one of his dad's best friend. So there was a tie there, and he was a very tough player, had a cup of coffee in the NFL in the late 90s. And so he understands tough coaching. You got to be able to coach your best players hard, because then that means you're probably coaching all your players consistently hard. And when your best players are your hardest workers, you got a better chance. And that's what we had with Efton Chism.
Well, it'll be really exciting to see him get here. Rookie minicamp. We're actually going to have some access on Friday to be able to go out there and watch him run around. So it'll be a blast. But I wanted to ask you before we let you go, Aaron, about your program now and how it looks moving forward without Efton Chism. But how excited are you as things sort of ramp up here? And I'm just looking at your schedule right now. Looks like it's not going to be easy right out of the gates. You got Boise State in early September. So they've made it tough on you. But how excited are you to really get things going and get to fall camp in a few months here?
Well, I mean, excited will come. We got a few holes to patch up, as you know. You're talking about ramping it up. I mean, at the college level, it's ramped up day in and day out. It's a 365-day job. Well, it's coaching, teaching, mentoring, lifting, meeting. I mean, it's what we do. But very excited. I'm humbled to be able to be the leader of this program that I once played for and cut my teeth in. And I owe this university and program and department and city more than I can ever repay it. Being a Cheney guy now for almost 30 years. And so I'm excited for the kids. We don't want it easy. We want it tough. I think delayed gratification can be the best form of gratification. I really do. When you have instant success, sometimes that puts unnecessary roadblocks and detours in front of you. So we're excited. We're going to have to get production out of multiple guys instead of leaning on one guy last year. And that might have been the most impressive thing that we did last year in the past game is we knew we had one big target. Everybody we faced knew we had one big target. We found ways to get Efton open. Efton found ways to get open. So even though they knew where the ball was going, we knew where the ball was headed. We were still productive in that way. So it'll be a new face of receivers that pick up the production from a community standpoint, not from an individual standpoint. And we're excited about the new guys and the fresh faces and the new quarterback that is going to be throwing the ball to those pass catchers. And it'll be tough, but that'll get prepared for the tough Big Sky Conference, and it'll be life without Efton, and that's the way it is. I mean, people graduate, and you're forced to move on. That's our job as coach and players to know and be thankful for their production and their time here. But life moves forward; it doesn't stand still.
Well, you guys have had obviously a long line of productive receivers, productive offensive players, period. So it'd be no surprise when you see more come through and perform this year. Aaron, thanks so much for being with us and teaching us a little bit about Efton Chism. This is a guy that I know a lot of Patriots fans are excited to get to see a little bit more of. And so hopefully we'll get to see a lot of him this spring and summer, and we'll have to give you another call in the fall if and when he ends up making that 53-man roster.
Absolutely. He's a stud. Wish you the best. Wish you all the best. I appreciate your time.
All right, great stuff there from Aaron Best. Really appreciate him sharing some time with us as he's getting his program ready to go. As he said, it's a 365-day-a-year job that he is handling out there at Eastern Washington. So great stuff from him to be able to learn about Efton Chism a little bit more. And just FYI, in case you missed it, I did have Efton Chism making my way too ridiculously early 53-man roster projection for your New England Patriots, which we put together soon after the draft, soon after draft weekend, because again, Efton Chism wasn't drafted. And I actually have him making the roster over a couple of guys who were drafted late in the draft, but to me project more as developmental types. Not that Chism doesn't fit that mold. Not that Brock Lampy doesn't fit that mold, who we talked about on the last edition of the Next Pats podcast with James White. James White calling his shot, saying Brock Lampy is going to be Josh McDaniels' next fullback. I had Lampy on the roster. I had Lan Larison out of UC Davis, the running back who can do a little bit of everything, including wrestle steers to the ground. We're going to learn a little bit more about Lan Larison on a future episode of the Next Pats podcast as well, so keep an eye out for that. So I had 3 undrafted rookies on my ridiculously early 53-man roster projection, and Chism is one of them. I just think when you get a route runner, the kind of route runner that I think Efton Chism is, and you pair him with Josh McDaniels, he's going to look at that guy and wonder what the possibilities might be. Now, what might work against him is, as we read from Dane's profile, if he's not the most productive punt returner of all time, right, just 4.5-ish yards per punt return for Eastern Washington, can they find him a jersey, right? Can you be on the roster as the 5th or 6th receiver and really not contribute all that much in the kicking game? That's a tough thing to pull off. But if he's productive enough in practices, if he's productive enough in these preseason games, and he puts it on tape for the rest of the league to see, so when roster cutdowns happen, a team in need of a player like an Efton Chism, do they look at that and say, we got to have that guy? Okay. Well, if that's the case and he doesn't play special teams, now you might go out of your way to find Efton Chism a roster spot just because you don't want to lose him if you're New England, even if he is somewhat, quote-unquote, buried on the receiver depth chart, right? Even if you're finding room for Matt Collins to get snaps. You're finding room for Stephon Diggs. Say he's healthy enough to start the season to get snaps. Kyle Williams, your 3rd-round draft pick. He's obviously going to get snaps. Kendrick Bourne, you're matching him up with Josh McDaniels again. If he can return to that form that he showed in 2021. Okay, now he's your 4th guy. And that you still have maybe Jalen Polk on the roster. Maybe it's Kayshon Boutte. It's Pop Douglas. Like now you're getting into 5th and 6th receivers. I'm not saying it'll be easy for Chism to make the roster, but I am saying you shouldn't rule it out. There's a reason they went out and they made sure they got this guy. And in my opinion, it's because he looks like a real fit for what the old coordinator, now the new coordinator in Josh McDaniels, wants to do here. Okay, let's get to our most improved list, because I do think this is an interesting conversation because it allows us to dig into both what the new coaching staff has to offer while also projecting what some players who underperformed last year can do in a new scheme, with a new voice in their ears, with a different style of coaching around them. And the name I want to start with, and I think he might be the most improved of anybody on this list in 2025, is safety Kyle Dugger. And we heard from him earlier this week. It sounded like he was excited to work with Mike Vrabel and defensive coordinator Terrell Williams. And in my opinion, he should be. Kyle Dugger is Mike Vrabel's kind of safety. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to play in 2025 and he's just going to be this freak of nature and all of a sudden he's going to be an all-pro. However, if you look at Vrabel's history in Tennessee and the kind of safeties who played a lot of football for him and had a lot of success, Kevin Byard, Amani Hooker, going back to the earlier days of the Vrabel era in Tennessee, Kenny Vaccaro, these guys were all do-it-all types. And Kevin Byard had unbelievable production in terms of getting his hands on the football and reeling in interceptions, but he did everything. They aligned him in the box. They aligned him as a split field safety. They aligned him over the slot. He was a traditional free safety at times, and it was for all 3 of those names that I just mentioned. Again, those were probably Vrabel's most used safeties while he was with the Titans. They all did everything. Everything. They wanted to hit. They could get their hands on the football. They could produce in that way. They were smart enough to be able to handle a variety of different roles. They were smart enough to be able to communicate to the rest of the defense what they should be doing. It's part of the reason why they were as interested as they were in Craig Woodson out of Cal. And they took him in the 4th round, their first pick on day 3. I didn't love that pick. I thought there were other players on the board that to me projected as the types of players who might be able to help you a little bit more. But Woodson clearly fits the mold of what Vrabel is looking for, and I think Dugger does as well. Maybe in some different ways, right? You're not going to look at Kyle Dugger and, he really looks like almost a modern-day linebacker and plays like one at times. I don't know if that's what Woodson is going to be necessarily, but in terms of the versatility that these guys bring to the table, in terms of the ferocity, when contact opportunities are presented to them on the field, those are things that we know Kyle Dugger, when he's at his best, those are the kinds of things that he seeks out. And I think in this scheme, and with Mike Vrabel, and now that he's healthy, or he should be at least, he's coming off a high ankle sprain that he really tried to play through all last year. He was a shell of himself physically last year. And I know the new staff under Mike Vrabel was appreciative of what Dugger did for the team last year, playing through an injury where he clearly was diminished and not tapping out and saying, this is a lost season. I'm banged up. I'm doing nothing but hurting myself and my reputation, quite frankly, here by being on the field. So that's it for me. We'll see you next year. He didn't do that. And for a coaching staff that's now led by the guy who's leading it, and Mike Vrabel, that's going to be something that he appreciates. You know, we're hearing stories now about Kyle Williams and the fact that he played in his bowl game at Washington State when everybody left. The quarterback left. The head coach was leaving. You know, it was a ghost town in some ways. And yet he played and he put up big numbers and they lost, but he wasn't going to give up on his program. You know, that's the kind of thing that this staff is going to appreciate. This is in some ways going to be an old school. How much do you love football? Putting value on football character and competitiveness and mental toughness, all of that stuff. Moments like that, I think, are really going to speak to Mike Vrabel. And to me, Kyle Duggar playing through injury last year is that kind of prolonged football character moment. And so, new scheme, healthier body. This is a guy, to me, who will be among, if not their most improved player under Mike Vrabel and this new coaching staff. Let's go with Keion White. This, to me, is an easy one. Mike Vrabel has worked with a number of young edge rushers in the past. You know, in Houston, Whitney Merciless and Jadeveon Clowney, he got a lot of credit for how those guys developed over time. You know, Harold Landry had some great years in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel there. We know what Vrabel was able to do as a player here, but his ability to speak to players who play that position on the defensive line, especially on the edge of the defensive line, to be able to help them with the nuances of the game. And we know he's willing to mix it up physically himself, throw the pad on and get right out there with these guys. I could really see somebody like Keion White taking to the style of coaching that he's going to get from Mike Vrabel, but also really benefiting from the tips and the tricks of the trade that he's going to learn from Vrabel, because we've seen Vrabel do it in the past with really physically talented players. And we know when you're talking about Keion White, that's really where you start, right? At least at this stage of his career, where we're still waiting to see him completely break through. Had an excellent early portion of the season last season, and then things sort of fell apart on him. And even he would acknowledge that. Some very open and honest conversations with myself and others late last year from Keion White. And so to me, that's an easy one to mention in this instance, just because of Mike Vrabel's experience in the position that Keion White plays. How about Mike Onwenu? Mike Onwenu, to me, did not have a great year. Mental lapses, you know, he was out there, which I give him credit for. But let's pull up some of the grades from Pro Football Focus when it came to offensive linemen. Regular season, 2024. We'll go overall grades here, and we'll just search for Mike Onwenu, and I'll just give you an idea of where he ranked. And for his salary, he can't, from a Patriots standpoint, rank here. You know, 51st in the NFL in terms of overall grade, which you might say, oh, that's a starting caliber player. But for Mike Onwenu, you know, to be making as much as he's making, and good for him. You know, he had the Patriots in a difficult spot where their offensive line was talent-wise really brutal last offseason. We know they didn't do a whole lot to improve it and add to it. And so you lose David Andrews and it gets even worse. But as somebody who's, you know, got a $57 million contract, $19 million per year, you know, fully guaranteed 36.5, you got to be better than the 51st guard in the NFL. Now, again, this is a player who, to me, maybe needs a different style of coaching. And so you get Doug Marrone in here, who is old school, who is going to be hard driving, and I think can and has at times rubbed players the wrong way. Maybe Onwenu needs a little bit of that. You know, I thought it was a little eye-opening for anyone who watched our coverage, our on-the-clock special on night one of the draft, to get Bill O'Brien on the horn as somebody who obviously is the head coach at Boston College, and so can provide us great insight into a number of different collegiate prospects. But we wanted to talk to him after the Patriots drafted Will Campbell because he helped recruit Will Campbell when he was at Alabama. And obviously Campbell ended up going to LSU, but he got to know Campbell got to know his family. And so for him to just give us some insight into his personality and what he was then and the kind of player he was then and the kind of player he is now and what he's shown at the SEC level, he was a great resource for us, O'Brien was. But he was going through and talking about the offensive line and just how much more improved it'll be. And he said something along the lines of, when Mike Onwenu is driven to be a great player, he can be a great player. And I don't think O'Brien necessarily meant anything in a negative sense by that. But to me, if you are willing to, read between the lines there, obviously O'Brien spent a lot of time with Mike Onwenu when he was offensive coordinator here a couple years ago. And to me, that just might be a little bit of a hint of, hey, he just might need a little poking and a little prodding at times, a little encouragement, a little extra motivation. Just to get the most out of him. And that doesn't make him unlike a lot of football players. But will he get that from Doug Marrone? I think he might. I think he might. Because if he doesn't, I just don't know how well that will be received, even though he's an incredibly highly paid guy. And it's not like the Patriots are going to be cutting him anytime soon. But can you get through to him? I think Vrabel and Marrone, I think they have the ability to do that. So I have Mike Onwenu on my most improved list as well. Let's go with Kendrick Bourne, and let's just give you the numbers really quickly from Kendrick Bourne back in 2021. And I know this is several years ago now. This is an ACL injury ago now. We know Bourne in 2023 had that season, which was looking like a really productive season for him. He was on pace for another 800-plus yard season, which he had never done in his career outside of his 1 year with Josh McDaniels in 2021. So maybe he's a different player now than he was in that first year with McDaniels. But in that first year with McDaniels, 70 targets, 55 catches, 800 yards on the nose, 5 touchdowns. That's a pretty damn good year. And, 47 yards per game. If he's giving you that as a third or fourth type of option, maybe a fifth or sixth type of option when you're factoring in the tight ends and the running backs that are going to be in the mix this year for New England. If he can get anywhere close to that level of production, that to me is a win. And so, I think McDaniels knows how to get the most out of Kendrick Bourne. And so after a year last year where he plays in 12 games, he has 305 total yards. I'm expecting more from that. So he's on my list of most improved. Let's put Pop Douglas there too, because Pop Douglas, again, he's playing for a coordinator now who knows how to use that position. I don't think he's going to get beat out by Efton Chism. I'm not sure. Let's leave open the possibility. One thing I would say about Pop Douglas that hurts him is his size. Even Efton Chism, I think, is going to end up being a little bit bigger and a little bit thicker than Pop Douglas, who's listed at 5'8", 192. I'm not quite sure he's at that 192 mark. That feels generous to me, but good for him if he is. And if he comes back and he's stronger and he's bigger this year, maybe he can hold up in some way, shape, or form when he's asked to block by Josh McDaniels, because that's something that McDaniels is going to ask his receivers to do, especially the interior guys. Think about that 2021 season. Jacoby Myers goes out to Vegas with Josh McDaniels. They loved that Myers could get up the field and dig out a safety. They loved that, on those crack toss plays, that he could ear hole an end and put him on the ground. You need a little size to be able to handle those duties. And so maybe that'll be Mac Hollins at times. Who knows? He's thought to be an excellent blocker for his position. I think of him, and when I think of him, I think more of his production late last year in Buffalo. And we talked to Tyler Dunn from GoLongTD.com about this because Tyler follows those Bills so closely. He was really making plays down the field for Josh Allen. I in my mind's eye, I'm envisioning him as an outside boundary type of wide receiver. But if they want him in that Jacoby Myers role because he can lay people out, he's not going to be that kind of route runner, in my opinion. But he is physically going to be able to do what you're asking him to do in that regard. Is Pop Douglas, is Efton Chism for that matter. You're not going to ask them to dig out a 215-pound safety the way that you might a bigger receiver. But when it comes to option routes, quickness off the line of scrimmage, catch and run ability, screen game, schemed up types of touches, these are all things that we know Josh McDaniels can do. And to me, Pop Douglas is a real weapon. And, I can remember talking about it on the podcast, but coming away from the combine and talking to a number of different people around the league, scouts, coaches who are scouting and are looking very closely at what the Patriots are bringing to the table offensively here. They look at Pop Douglas and what he did last year, and they say, what was going on there? Why didn't they use him more? And that was after a 66 catch season, 621 yards. So it wasn't like he had an unproductive year, but they thought that he should have been even more involved. And so for a guy that I know had a lot of respect in Tennessee when Mike Vrabel was there, coming out of the draft, coming out of Liberty, obviously they passed on him a bunch, as the Patriots did, because he didn't go until the 6th round. But I know there were important people in the building there who liked him. And, now they get the opportunity to work with him. And so my guess is by the end of 2025, he should be on our list of most improved as well. So let's end it there. You got some names like Jabril Peppers. We know why he missed as much time as he missed last year. He should be better, although, but for those reasons, I'm not sure, most improved, like he really fits this conversation. Same with Christian Barmore. Christian Barmore just needs to be healthy and be on the field. Could he be even better than he was when he was last fully healthy and fully in rhythm and playing a lot and playing consistently? Yeah, I think he could, because of who he's going to be playing alongside. And Milton Williams, there's going to be a lot of attention devoted to that guy when he gets the kind of paycheck that he did this past offseason. So that should help Christian Barmore a ton. But for reasons that are out of his control, difficult for us to project, exactly how much he's going to play, never mind how much better he's going to be in 2025. So you just hope he's healthy. You hope, and it seems as though he's been able to participate extensively in the offseason program to this point. And so you hope he just continues on that trajectory for his sake, for his family's sake. He continues on that trajectory and he can be a productive player for New England in 2025 and beyond. But just a good, fun exercise for us to go through there, especially as we continue to consider how things will change under Mike Vrabel and the rest of the staff. And yeah, we probably should throw Drake May in that conversation too, right? Again, I think it would be almost more a product of going into your second year, understanding opposing NFL defenses, just having seen so much more pro football, getting so much experience under your belt. You expect every young quarterback who plays a lot to get a lot better in year two. But you pair him with Josh McDaniels and maybe whatever his improvement was going to be, you strap a rocket to the back of that thing and you see it get that much better because of the coaching that he's going to be surrounded by and because of the improvement in the weapons that he'll have to throw to in 2025. So let's put Drake May on that list there too. But we talk so much about Drake May. I guess it just slipped. Is it possible that it just slipped my mind? You just assume, yeah, he's going to be better. All right. We can all agree on that, right? Okay. Agreed. Thanks so much for listening to the latest edition of the Next Pats podcast. Thanks so much to Aaron Best for coming on and teaching us about Eastern Washington and Efton Chism and the really legendary career that guy had. Almost 4,000 yards in 5 seasons. Legendary career that guy had out there. It'll be a lot of fun to watch him play a little bit later this week when we get out to rookie minicamp. Next week, we've got a lot to talk about. We'll have some takeaways from rookie minicamp. What better place to express those takeaways than here on the Next Pats podcast? And maybe even more importantly, we're going to have a schedule to talk about, friends. Schedule release day is May 14th. We've got something very special planned for you all, maybe something live planned for you all on the night of the schedule release in the NFL. 8 p.m. Eastern is when they will drop all of the schedules. It's when all those teams drop all of their silly social media videos letting us know where they will be playing and when, but we will be breaking it all down. So keep an eye out for the next edition of the Next Pats podcast, and we will talk to you next time.